another hearing. So this is the second hearing of DepEd. As all of you know, I don't have any questions anymore. Senator Lauren initially had asked that you do some housekeeping. So very quickly, we'll ask you to present that Secretary Buones. But before that, just to give way to my colleague here, whom unfortunately I asked him to wait for a while now, but we'll give the floor to Senator JV. And when he is finished, we'll talk about some of the concerns of Senator Lauren. And we hope to finish quite quickly. Thank you.
That's right. Just, we'll just hear the part first now, and then we'll just ask the questions later.
All right, Secretary Buones, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, members of the panel. Good afternoon, Chair Senator Bam Aquino and Senator J.V. Ejercito. During the first hearing, we were given three assignments. One is the breakdown of the 21.5 billion reverted funds last year. And then we're also asked to give a forecast on the major programs which we expect to, which we are expected to finish by 2017. And then we thought that it would be useful to also present a procurement timeline for the use of the 2016 and 2017 funds, which the Senate might find useful as it reviews the performance of DepEd as well as the needs of the government for additional funds. And another major assignment was the submission of a listing of laws which need to be possibly reviewed by the Senate and the entire House in terms of the whether at this point in time some of the provisions would be still be helpful in speeding up the accomplishment of government goals. So firstly, we are presenting a breakdown of the 21.5 billion reverted funds in 2016. As we mentioned in the first hearing, out of this 21 billion, 10.4 11 billion is actually unreleased appropriations, and there is also a breakdown. And then the unobligated allotment is 10.4 billion actually. And then this 10.4 billion in the next slide is broken down into the various its various compositions. One would be the unobligated allotment for 2016 for personal services. This is 5.8 billion. Again, there is an explanation, and also the reverted funds for maintenance and other operating expenditures. We have explained here that the bulk really of the activities of the department start in June, because this is when classes start. And the utilization of funds is dependent on enrollment and availability of information, and there were also procurement challenges. The next slide is a detailed listing of the maintenance and other operating expenses which were reverted. Again, there is an explanation for the reversion, and this is to the amount of 2.3 billion. Still continuing with the next slide, which is item 16 to 31. Again, a final listing totaling 2.6 billion of MOOE programs which had to be reverted. Now, in terms of the reverted funds for capital outlay, there were constraints in the procurement of goods and works influenced by market or industry limitations in order to meet the huge basic education sector demands. Now, for capital outlay, again, there's a detailed listing item by item for the use of the Senate, amounting to 1.2 billion. In spite of the reverted funds, the next slide shows that 10 billion in terms of the lapse is 2.5% of the total released funds, and this is the lowest so far across 5 years. If you start with 2016, from 2012, 16.5%, 2013, 3.8%, 2014, 4.2%, 2015, because this is the lowest level of utilization in 2015, 5.6%, and now it is 2.50%, 2.5%. Now, in order to improve budget utilization, this was the first concern which we immediately worked on upon our assumption. To keep lapses low, we have here a listing of the fiscal management reforms. I will not go through them one by one because these were already presented during the first hearing. Because the very first issue that we attended to upon assumption of office was really the financial management problems, challenges, as well as the organizational structure of the DepEd. And the next slide, again, this was shown earlier on during the last hearing. We have shown major improvements in from March to August alone, because the latest number, which is really 18% and can be considered very low, and this is before the start of classes, from March to August alone, from 18% to 52% was a major leap in agency obligation improvements, and this is also shown in the next chart, where we also show in contrast March vis-a-vis August. This is because, as I was pointing out, this was already the opening of classes and activities were already accelerating. Still, in 2016, I said that we introduced many interventions to improve budget utilization. In 2017, we strengthened these improvements, we strengthened these initiatives, and we also had activities to support and sustain absorptive capacity. So we did an existing review of existing laws, which is the next chart, local support, and so on and so forth, civil service appointments. We were really focusing on the management side of it because we knew that utilization was a major challenge. Now, that is insofar as the breakdown of the 21.5 billion is concerned. Not only did we say the components, share with you the components of the 21.5 billion, we're also saying what was done and what is being done to avoid a repetition of the same challenges for this year and for the following years. The next, which we are presenting, is a forecast. This is in response to your request, Senator, that we share with you what is our projection, our idea of what will happen up to the end of the year. So on the major PAPs, total adjusted allotment is 110 billion. Downloaded as of August is 38 billion, but this has been increasing dramatically. By the way, Mr. Senator, Mr. Chairman, when I started my administration, we expanded the number of bids and awards committee from 2 to 5. Right now, in the light of our present challenges, we have expanded it to 6. We now have 6 bids and awards committee, or BACs, which are working practically day and night up to 3 o'clock in the morning to catch up with the unobligated funds. This accounts for the huge increase, the leap from March to August. Now, to be obligated from September to December would be 58 billion. Our projection is that this is only on the major PAPs, that by the end of December, we'll have an 88% level of utilization. But of course, this will be much higher if you already include all the other activities of DepEd as well as personnel. Kasi last year, we were able to attain 66%, pero yung total natin, including all the other expenditures, was 90%. Ito ngayon, will attain ang projection natin 88% just on the major PAPs, which is not particularly disappointing, I hope. At the end of the year, we also have an end of the year forecast for various detailed PAPs, which should be the textbooks, textbook, science and mathematics equipment, and so on and so forth by detail. Each time we have a chart, then we put out the details. The next chart also shows the same non-procurement on dependent PAPs, which is the GASTPE. GASTPE is quite a challenge, Mr. Chairman, because as you know, when we start the academic year in June, the billing for the first semester for the private schools would come in by September or October. So actually, we only are able to pay for the first semester. This explains why we have this significant unutilized amounts. We are already considering paying the schools for the entire year, paying in advance. That is one. Another, of course, is to just move the other half to the next year, in case the Senate has other ideas or thoughts on how this can be attended to. So, ito yun ang mga major PAPs. Now, again, the next chart shows a very detailed listing of actions which we took up in order to catch up with the remaining December 2017 balances. By the way, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Chairman, I have forbidden travels abroad of our leading officials between now and the end of the year so that we can be available whenever we will be necessary for consultations, with the President setting the example. And so you have here the breakdown of the balances. Now the next, this was not requested, but we thought it will be useful also for the Senate as it reviews the entirety of the national budget. We have the procurement timeline para makita talaga detalye yung mga ongoing projects at saka yung mga milestones which we agreed upon with which were agreed with DPWH. So may mga timelines na kami as of September 13, no? So you have a table on ongoing projects to be started from grades 1, 6, and 7, and so on. So, yung dalawang chart. We also have the timeline for the computerization program, which is at 10.3 billion, which we hope to be able to achieve in 89 days. Also, a timeline for designed tools and equipment for textbook, which we hope, God granting, no major catastrophes, natural or otherwise, 98 days. For textbooks and instructional materials to catch up with our backlogs, we are allotting at the very least 69 days. So we have very detailed timeline. Next is for science and mathematics. It's a bit longer. It would be 120 days. Science and mathematics equipment for 792 million. These are huge amounts, and this is why, as I said, we have 6 bids and awards committee looking and holding bids and awards committee meeting at all hours of the day and night. Now, We also have the procurement timeline, which is the last chart, up to January. The small circle means, the small ovals mean small amounts, the big circles means big amounts. So the bigger the amount involved, the bigger the circle. So we can tell immediately just by looking which are the more sensitive and urgent ones in terms of size and possible amount. Again, you have the timeline here, which will be a guide to everyone concerned. So DCP, timeline for math, science, and equipment, again broken down into the various sizes of amounts involved, TVL tools and equipment, textbooks, instructional materials. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, as promised and as requested by the Chairman of the Committee on Finance, we are submitting a listing with the details of the laws which we believe perhaps can stand a bit of review. Among these is Republic Act number 8047, which specifies, which does not allow DepEd to do the writing.
Secretary, it's a long list, no? We can just work with your legal office with Attorney Moyat to go over which of these provisions, no?
So, all in all, in summary, Honorable Chairman, we have complied,
Yes.
both written and in documentary form, the requests and the to use DepEd language, the homework.
Okay. Thank you for answering all the homework, Secretary. And my understanding is that Senator Lauren is not feeling well and she's not here, but you're already coordinating with her office directly. So just to be clear, before Senator airs those questions, can we go back to the slide, Josh, yung 110 tsaka 97? So of the 110 that's yet to be utilized, you will utilize 97. Is that correct? Yes. So in short, possibly, you will revert a minimum of about 12 billion back to the Treasury. No? Is that correct, Secretary? For the record po.
Yes, yes.
Alright, so minimum na po yan, no?
Yes.
Minimum of 12 billion. Alright, because again, as you know, we're trying to look for funds everywhere where we can find it, no?
Yes.
So 12 billion. Now, I also understand that one thing we have requested, which you're not submitting, is your forecast for 2018. Because we had asked if we were to cut or if we were to get from the budget of 2018 versus the 12 billion, considering the 12 billion that you will likely revert in December and the 21 billion that you reverted last December, meron mo ba kayong suggestion on how much we could possibly slash based on your assessment of your spending patterns for 2018?
Right now, Mr. Chair, it's difficult for us because this year has been a very active year for us, and we introduced so many changes. And at the rate we are going, we are quite optimistic already because our original, as early as 2016, our original target was to catch up with the backlogs by 2018. So
Yes.
we might be utilizing even at a much higher rate for 2018 because everything will be in place. We already have our MOA with DepEd, with DPWH and the DBM. We have our agreements, we have our schedules and our timelines, and we're going to make that part of our operating habits.
Well, wala pa ho dito yung classroom budget, no? It's not, wala ho siya dito. So,
No. Hindi namin sinama kasi hindi kasama sa assignment.
yes, and it's not your, it's technically not up to you, no?
No.
So, well, let me just leave the suggestion, even though we will submit this already for the plenary if Senator JV has no concerns. But I think it would be better if you advise us rather than you leave it up to us just to slash where we will slash. Because definitely there's 25 to 50 billion that we need to look for para sa free higher ed. And right now, the Finance Committee is really looking at the maganda ho hatang ma-advise nyo kami kesa hindi nyo kami ma-advise. No? I mean, that's just my suggestion. And secondly, I don't know if this is confirmed already, but is it correct that Congress is slashing 30 billion from the classroom budget? Is that correct?
It's just according to the newspaper.
That's right, no? But that's why I wanted to ask if you had heard already, if
We
this is
have
confirmed.
scheduled a meeting with the Appropriations Committee of Congress, because I'm sure between the two bodies they have a greater appreciation of the implication of
So it's not
slashing.
confirmed
Yeah, it's about 30%
of the classroom budget,
of the
no?
classroom budget.
Uh-huh.
Because right now, the balance of the classroom budget is about 46 billion. Yan ang 46. And then if you get 30 billion from that 46, that leaves 16 billion. That's 1/3 already of the total.
No, my understanding it's the 30% of the classroom budget for next year.
For next
Not
year.
not for this year.
For
Because ito
next
po
year,
yung this year. It's 110 billion for, is that correct?
Yes.
106 billion for next year.
Yes.
So hindi mo siya yung 46 na natitira.
Yes, yes.
It's for 2018 budget.
Yes, but then, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Chair, we have to appreciate the fact that every year
You're
the
improving.
demand for more classrooms increase. And then if we cut from 2018, we're just passing on another level of deficit in classrooms to 2000.
Yes, Secretary. However, it's not a matter of the budget anymore. It's already a matter of implementation.
Yes, yes.
Meaning, we need to provide to you the right budget which you can spend or which
Yes.
DPWH can
Yes,
spend.
yes.
So, hindi po mapagkakailan na, for example, for this year, you are in effect returning at least about 12 billion. So that's 12 billion that could have been used for something else. No? So, we have to also recognize that there are efficiency issues. No? So, well, my question lang naman was, is it confirmed? So it's not confirmed.
No, no,
At
no.
hindi pa sigurado yun.
We
Wala
have
lang po
to-
sa balita.
We have to confirm from the House. Also, my understanding, Honorable Chair, is that hopefully by 2018, the train aspect of the revenue side of the budget will hopefully have been started. The train will have started chugging along. If you will, with all due respect, it's just my personal opinion. I believe that in next year's budget, a very, very clear source of revenue for the SUCs has to be identified, because it is not, it may not be practical to be always for looking for funds from proposals for other agencies. It will not work that
Yes,
way.
well, actually, Secretary, alam niyo rin naman to that every year the budget increases about 8 to 10%. And the need for the free tuition is roughly only, really, it's not 50 billion, it's only about 20 to 25 billion. So if you're looking at a 3.7 trillion budget and you're increasing by 10%, that's 370 billion, surely 20 to 25 billion out of 370 can be doable. So even with the natural rate of increase of our budget, we can find funds. And in fact, we will find funds for that, we will find funds for your classroom budget, we will find, kasi lumalaki naman yung ekonomiya natin, no? So it's not really a question anymore of funding. In fact, you will return 12 billion this year, you returned 20 billion last year, they returned even larger, I think, in previous years. No? So, hindi na ho provision of money yung problema. It's now a matter of efficiency. And you've been improving. If you really hit 12 billion, then you would have decreased your underspending by maybe 60%, no? Which is good. But it's not already a question anymore of na nagtitipid natin yung ibang mga ahensya. Definitely ang DepEd hindi natin tinitipid kasi nagbabalik pa kayo ng pera. Yung DOTR hindi natin tinitipid because nagbabalik pa sila ng pera. It's really a question now of efficient spending. So, anyway, alam ko napakaintindihan naman tayo. But my suggestion lang moving forward is you guide us because I think there will be a slash somewhere. And I think it's better if you tell us rather than kami po yung magsa-slash niya, mas magandang kayo na po yung mag-guide sa amin kung saan. I know it's difficult to say kung saan nyo po gusto ni-slash, but let's just be realistic in terms of magkano ba yung kaya pong magastos at hindi. No? So, anyway, I'll stop there. We'd like to recognize Senator Zubiri, who has, I'm sure, some questions. So, we'll start with Senator Ejercito, and then Senator Zubiri will be asking his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Siguro, our chair has already indicated that we are already looking at the other budgets of other agencies also, and we are looking at those agencies that have been unutilized funds. No? As you all know, we are looking for about 25 to 50 billion so that we can fund important programs like free higher education and others. So probably it's better that it will come from your department, madam, that before we make that slash somewhere, we want to make sure that it doesn't really affect your major programs. No? It doesn't affect. No? So maganda nga yung suggestion ni Senator Bam, no? That you suggest also and help us look for items, no, that can be slashed, that would, I'm sure it will affect, but not as much. No? So there are some items, Madam Secretary, that I going through the budget that I think have low utilization, no? And probably you can tell us kung kaya o hindi. No? One is yung teachers' items. So there are about 46,000 items for this, or about 45.2 billion allotted, but the absorptive capacity is around 32,000. Yung kaya nyo lang punuan, 32,000. So may 14,000 ho tayong items that are not being filled up. So that is about 10 billion, Madam Secretary. Anybody can answer? Anybody from DepEd?
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Yes, yes, yes.
Good afternoon, Chair, Your Honor. Well, if you look at the current status of filling up of the positions, no, for 2017 alone, we were able to fill up those items, increase the filling up rate from 13.7% in July. As of September 20, the rate is now at 47.42%. If you compare this with the other years of filling up, the rate hovers around 98%, except for 2016, because 2016, as you recall, Your Honors, is the year that we are implementing the senior high school program, which necessitates really some fine-tuning in also the way we hire our teachers. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one sentence, we will be quite prepared and we are quite willing to review the teachers' items and our capacity to fill them up. Kasi what we are trying to do, Mr. Chair, is to reduce the class sizes because we want to eliminate classes with 70 learners and so on. So, but we are willing to take a look at the teachers' items.
Within the office of Senator JV, kulang ba tayo ng graduates or hindi nila pinipili ang DepEd? Alam ko mas option na ang DepEd yan kaysa private schools because we actually pay better the entry level.
Migration na nga, Mr. Chair.
Opo. Bakit? Pero even with that, why is it difficult to fill up all the positions?
There are several reasons, Mr. Chair. Our need right now, because of the introduction of senior high school, is for science and math. And we have to match that with the qualifications of the applicants. So perhaps we have to go back to the universities. Another reason, as I said already, as I mentioned already, is the reduction of the class sizes. The third is the time that it takes to process an appointment. Before it used to take a year, and we're now shortening it kasi yung absorptive capacity, yung pag-employ, mabagal.
So a year to hire?
Yeah, di ba? Dati. 3 months.
Okay. So from the time of application till the time of deployment is 3 months.
3 months. We have reduced that, but we are quite willing and amenable to reviewing the required namin.
I would suggest po, Secretary, and this is well, during my time as chairman of the committee, we had started this already, is really doing more academic industry linkage. In this case, DepEd is the industry because you're in the same way that we propose to BPOs to talk to universities directly and hire hire individuals out of fourth year pa lang nag-a-apply na, maybe you also need to do that and work with the universities. Yung mga normal universities po, napakarami. I don't know if they know that the need is for science and technology. Kasi kung ganun, they should already be looking at their slots and telling their students na kung kayo'y nasa ibang subject, baka di kayo makakuha ng trabaho. Pero kung science and technology, makakakuha. So meaning, that linkage, especially with SUCs, can be done rather easily, I think, no? So
Yes.
baka po we can reach out to them already.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the advice.
Opo. And we can also help, we've actually had hearings, but
Yes.
ngayon ko lang po kasi naisip that DepEd is also an industry to a certain extent, no?
Yes.
Kasi we've done it for the semiconductors, we've done it for the BPOs, linking them, and HRM, no? Pero baka nga po, DepEd, which is I would guess you're the largest employer of teachers now,
Yes, right.
can go directly to the schools at habang kumbaga, catch them even before they graduate, have them apply even before they take the board exams, then pending board exam results, they already have a job. Baka nga mas maingganyo pa sila to do well kasi alam nila may possible job na po, no?
Also, we are also asking the help of media and of the public to help erase the tendency to think that maybe many of us Filipinos are not into science and math,
Okay.
which is,
Okay.
of course, it is not true because our students have been winning in contests all over the world and are doing very well. We have a person in NASA, a scientist, and so on, and it's not because all of us have the same capacities, whether it's for science or for the arts. So it has to be two-pronged campaign. Also, to be directed not just to the schools, Mr. Chair, but to the parents.
Thank you, Senator Aquino. Likewise, Madam, siguro just to give us an idea, the committee, realistically, how many positions, probably anybody can answer, no? Sa finance, can DepEd fill up? Yun talaga, kasi sa nakikita natin, in the historical, that parang 2/3 po na-fill up, may 1/3 pong hindi na-fill up eh. So, what's the realistic? Probably Yusek Mateo, can you answer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. Chair. Let me dissect lang the issue kasi the issue of the teacher pertains to the K to 10, then the senior high school. If you look at the pattern of filling up of positions, let's say starting 2010, no? We stood around 98-99% filling up of items. But this is for K to 10. But there's a different matter when it comes to senior high school. That's the reason why when you pass the RA 10533, which is the K to 12 program, you provided DepEd some elbow room to hire even non-licensed teachers. For last year, we hired close to about 49,000. For senior high school, we filled up 30,000 items out of 36. But you also have to recall that under the senior high school, we cannot just offer the starting grade of salary grade 11. We have to accommodate also other qualifications, let's say for a master's degree graduate or from those affected by the K-12 program. We were able to hire them such that we created not only teacher 1 items but also teacher 2, teacher 3, master teacher 1, master teacher 2. But when it comes to budgeting, we use the salary grade 12, which is teacher 2, as basis for coming up with the amount. But then again, when we do implement it, it depends now on the number of applicants and their qualification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another item, looking at the forecast of major PAPs. Yung po sa GASPE, Madam Secretary, probably can you just give us probably a brief description on how this works, no? Kasi medyo malaki ito, 39.3 billion. So we just want to know that, we know that yung pong excess students, no, are being absorbed by the private institutions, and we are providing, tama ba ba? We are subsidizing those students. So, siguro briefly lang ako kung paano yung mechanisms, kasi medyo malaki rin ho eh. Baka tayo magkaroon ng adjustments.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the GASPEP program, we compensate the private sector, no? And then we make calculations. Perhaps Yusek Vicky can explain further. We make calculations, and then the billing again, and the timing of the billing and the payment really overlaps into the next year. Kaya may mga unspent because as I mentioned, the calendar year for
School year kasi
ang calendar year namin iba sa fiscal year ng national government. You start January, kami we start June eh. We start moving and acting vigorously by June. Kaya that is one reason, but I can ask Yusek Vicky to.
Under the GASPEP program po, we have educational service contracting for junior high school. We have teacher salary subsidy also for junior high school, and we have the senior high school voucher program. And under these different supported private schools, the reason why we give teacher salary subsidy is to encourage teachers in the private sector who are late passers to stay on in the private sector, so that the quality of instruction in private schools will be as at par with public schools who are late passers. And for junior high school, which is from grade 7 to 10, we have two types of subsidy, one for urbanized and one for other than urbanized center locations. And the reason that we have a higher budget for GASPE is because we are proposing that we increase these subsidies because they've not been increased for quite some time now. And the reality is that the cost of education has risen. And we're also trying to make the educational service contracting program like the senior high school, where there are 3 tiers, one for NCR, then that's for highly urbanized, and for all the others. For senior high school, like what the secretary has been explaining, for junior high school we bill only once, we pay for the whole year. But for senior high school we pay by semester. So we pay 1/2 of what we gave during the first semester.
For the whole year po? O ito percent?
Percent yung senior high school.
Senior. Ano po yung whole year?
1 year. Yun yung junior high.
Junior high. So,
At saka yung teacher salary subsidy.
is it possible siguro, ma'am, kung sakali, kasi malaki din, kung baka pwedeng i-reprogram so that you can still use portions of it, and then probably yung iba, next year recharge. That's why we want to ask if that's possible. So we do not want your major programs to be affected, but we're trying to see if it can be reprogrammed so that funds can be maximized or utilized. No?
Thank you, Your Honor. We will look into it very carefully.
Okay, thank you. Another item, may 2 more items, Mr. Chairman, no? That I have gone through that are possible sources, no, of slashes so that we can use, no, kasi ito po yung medyo matataas, ito po yung medyo mababa yung utilization, no. Number 3, I know that this will yung school buildings, no, it's about 3 billion, medyo mababa po yung utilization rate, no, but we understand there's also a backlog that just want to ask, gaano kalaki po yung backlog ho natin yan that we are trying to catch up in the next year.
Ask Yusek Alain.
Yusek Alain.
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, the total backlog that we have, classroom backlog, including 2018, is about 152,786 classrooms, Your Honor. This is the total requirement that we need. And since we cannot answer this one time, we will be distributing the building of classroom through the next 4 years, including 2018. So, and most of this...
and through the coming years, you will add, students, no?
Yes,
So you will
that's
need
right.
more classrooms.
On a 4-year basis, Your Honor, more or less it's about 11,000 to 20,000 classrooms that we need as we increase the enrollment. And so more or less, the absolute shortage of classroom is about 84,781. That is answered supposed to be by our budget for 2018. But there are classrooms that we need already to replace because they are old, they are dilapidated, they are not substandard. They are not of the standard today, and that will be about 162,786.
So among the items that I have mentioned,
Yes.
I think the school buildings is, you would say that what dito?
Yes, Your Honor.
Because of the needs, every yearly annual increase, but siguro usually briefly, how do you address the low utilization para naman ma-maximize ho natin yung budget? Medyo itong finance committee that we have now is very much concerned on how budget is spent because we are in the need of, as measured by Senator Aquino, we are in need of some funds. No? So, yun lang, how do you improve the utilization, lalo na sa school buildings? Because now we understand that hindi nga pwedeng ikat ito.
For 2017, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, as of the moment, there are about 47 billion still to be programmed. But DPWH has provided us a timeline that come end of this month, they will be filling up the 47 billion worth. The DPWH is here, and they have given us a timeline that would even exceed the amount of 46 billion that remains to be programmed, because they have included already some of the sites that needed to be constructed by next year. So it is if DPWH would be giving us the entire program of works and complete costings, the amount of the appropriate amount, about 47 billion will be released immediately by DBM by end of October. They said they could obligate the entire 47 billion. Usually what they do is once the list has been submitted to DBM, they would already start procuring it short of award. So even before December, even though if the funds will be released middle or even early December, they can easily award it and they can easily obligate it. I think the USEC Dimas is here to explain this matter. But for 2018, what we are doing now for 2018 is we have also set September 30 of this month to come up with the entire list of all school buildings that we will be building for 2018, and then we start validating now. Because we would want that our validation would be finished within the year, so that early next year we can already start the procurement and implement the project. Once the school year will end on March, we start building the classrooms.
Okay, thank you. Secretary. Last item, Mr. Chair, siguro ito na. Now, we're quite convinced naman because of given the backlog that you have to catch up with, no? You just have to improve nila siguro to sa utilization. Doon po sa yung textbooks, no? Fourth item, last hearing, it was also noted that there's only a 23% delivery. Tama ba? No? So, Madam Secretary, what's the reason for anybody can answer, no? What's the reason for the very low utilization on the budget of textbooks?
To request, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, Undersecretary Yusek Lorna to shed light on the...
Yes, Yusek Lorna, please.
Procurement. And so, I believe Secretary Rios already mentioned that we are reviewing the laws pertinent to procurement And so, may I also advise, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, the body that as of now for senior high school, out of the 194 materials that we would like to develop, we only have 3 textbooks delivered to the different schools, and 17 of which are ongoing delivery. And we have a lot more for procurement and also for printing, as I was saying.
Using Lord, I'd just like to ask, no, kung meron tayong budget for printing of the textbook, I'd just like to ask, what is the time needed to complete the content sa development? Kasi mukhang doon nagkakaroon ng ano eh, doon na nagkakaroon ng bottleneck or delay, no? Nandun yung budget pero hindi nyo nagamit kasi po wala po yung i-print, wala yung content.
As far as the we need actually a year for the development of the materials. So the BLR has actually programmed all these development efforts prior to the need. But there are really cases wherein the writers can also not deliver at once the camera ready. Yes, so there are really constraints regarding the development as well.
If I may join the conversation, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor, one major problem is the law itself, which prohibits the department from writing the manuscripts. So we say what we want to be in the manuscript, but somebody else has to do it for us. And this takes time. We have had instances where we are ready to bid and perhaps even ready to have materials printed, but the manuscript is not available. This is a constant problem, and this is why we are requesting that the law should be reviewed and we be allowed to write the manuscripts ourselves.
So, Mr. Chair, siguro just, again, probably, Madam, if you can make suggestions on how we can reprogram some of the items that I have mentioned so that we can better utilize the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator JJ. We'd like to recognize Senator Zubiri for his questions, and then I'll be asking some questions that our chairman had sent. No? So, a few more questions from Senator Lauren also.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Honorable Secretary, mayong hapon, ma'am. Mayong hapon.
Mayong hapon, mayong hapon.
Mayong hapon sa atong mga kauban karon, atong mga, of course, our ASECs and our undersecretaries. Yes, just 3 topics, but really quickly. I'm not here to badger the good secretary because we're both from the same university, and I fully support the budget of the DepEd. I fully support that the DepEd should be getting the biggest amounts of the budget. Ang akin lang, ma'am, is just on the last hearing we had with ARM, it just kind of alarmed me that, and I'm sure you've read about it, I've come out in Star and Inquirer, about the issue on ghost students. Apparently, it came from the mouth of the good governor of ARM himself. Si Governor Mujib was saying that he had a problem with ghost students wherein some schools were actually declaring more students than they actually had. And he was told it's because it was a computation. It's computed like era of the local government. The more number of students you have, the more budget you'll get from the national agencies, etc., etc. I know ARM is not under you, Madam Secretary, but is that a formula also adopted by the DepEd itself for other regions? Do you compute number of students equals for the share of the pie? Is it correct?
As for the school MOE, this is for the general expenses of the school. We follow a particular formula. But first of all, we have to mention that ARMM is fiscally autonomous. They have their own Secretary of Education and so on. Nonetheless, the release of the funds is still with us. No, it goes direct to them. But the policy framework is that of DepEd. But we are very much aware of the very special challenges which we face out there in ARMM. But right now we are working very closely with each other, especially on the matter not only of ghost students, ghost teachers, and ghost schools themselves.
Maraming ghost.
Oo.
Kala ko, yung voters lang yung ghost, marami pa
yes,
yung
yes.
ghost.
But
Yeah.
ang problem is yung accountability, no? The problem of accountability kasi cash advance yun. Yung mga MOE, no? Pag-settle ng MOE. Oo. And so that is a continuing problem which ARMM is trying to settle.
Maybe you can help them and you can assist
Yes,
them.
yes, we have, okay. Yes.
Kailangan nila yata ng Ghostbusters para mawala yung mga ghost na yan. Yes, Isaac,
If I may know, when they started to implement our learner information system, kasi under the learner information system, there is a learner's reference number. So every student has that number.
like a student ID number sa UP.
Just to track nga po. When they started using that, that's the time when they were able to identify, as Governor Hataman said, no, ghost pupils. May implication po to doon sa allocation ng school MOE. Kasi under our formula for school MOE, we are considering what we call the Bongkoding formula, no, wherein you look at the number of enrollment, number of teachers, number of school buildings. These are initially the three factors that we use in computing the school MOE. Plus pa, sir, Senator, you also have to understand that there are non-implementing units and implementing units. Doon sa non-implementing units, these are, and mostly mga elementary to, they go through the division cash advance, do it through cash advance. Unlike yung implementing units, mostly high schools to, it goes directly to the high school per se.
The reason why I also brought this up is if we have the same formula in other regions that are handled by yourselves, because of this learner ID reference number, have we eliminated this type of ghost pupils at least at the at least low percentage level, or is it still prevalent?
To a great extent, yes, but quite complicated, as you can imagine.
So yun lang, and the reason why I brought that up is because of the Marawi rehab. We want to make sure that our funds are efficiently and effectively utilized. But that's for another hearing altogether, so I'm not going to belay that point today. But on the, remember ma'am, the last time you were here, we discussed about IP schools. And it's very close to my heart because Bukidnon, 30% of our population is indigenous peoples. And they're really up in the mountains. Ang nawawalan po ng, ang iba doon, ang tumatakbo ng ibang IP schools doon ay mga nice people around. Yun po yung mga kaibigan natin sa bundok. Kaya nga naging contentious issue yan kay Presidente because I believe it was one press con that he had that he was very upset with the IP communities for allowing these IP schools not run by DepEd to come in and to indoctrinate, teach and indoctrinate. So we're trying to avoid that, to make sure that the IP schools that are run by the DepEd are officially national government-run education centers. So could you give us an update, Madam Secretary, maybe your insights on the implementation of the IP schools run by government, Madam Secretary?
Yes, Your Honor. We have IP schools not only in Mindanao but all over the country, and we have, at least by our count, insofar as the public school system is concerned, we have about 2.7 million IP learners in the public school systems, and there are 2,700 schools, IP schools, also part of the public school system. The ones that are the subject of the controversy would be several out of your 2,700. Most IP schools are well regulated. They are either run by the Department of Education, but there are also schools run by churches, civil society groups, etc. Now, for the usual procedure, Your Honor, to get recognition from the government of the schools is first you have to have the usual, you have to have a permit to operate, and there is a listing of requirements for the school to be operated. Now, the problem, the challenge for some schools, not very many because most schools have permits, would really be getting the permit to operate. Now, if a school has a permit to operate, therefore it is also regulated. The permit to operate, Your Honor, is valid only for 1 year, and after which the school will be assessed whether it should be given recognition or not. When a school is recognized, then it can issue already diplomas and certificates like high school certificates. Now, the challenge to some IP schools, but really not all, Your Honor, is that they have difficulty complying with the requirements of the permit. That is the challenge. Now, they are given up to 5 years, 5 renewals. After 1 year, because of demand, renew. And then for 5 more years, renew and renew and renew. After which, hindi ka na talaga mag-qualify. Kasi 5 years na renewal. We have made special dispensations in certain IP schools na binigyan pa namin ng 90 days extension. So nonetheless, out of some schools, groups of schools, you only have 2 which have recognition and a good number which still don't have permits. That is where the issue is. But generally, most of the IP schools, kasi you have 2,700, they are operating quite well, regulated, and so on. And the graduates can move on to college or
yes, ma'am. But the 2,000 that you mentioned, how many are run by DepEd?